Did you have some trepidation before you met him then?
I had trepidation about getting too close to him and ending up discussing politics.
Right.
And I was afraid I'd get to like him and that would be a problem.
In the 1950s, few stars in Hollywood shone quite like Ricky Nelson. For millions of people tuning in on their TVs and radios, he was the teen idol. A clean-cut, smiling singer whose songs all seemed to be about young love and a very parent-approved version of rock and roll. His face was on magazine covers, his voice was in every jukebox, and his personality, which was shaped on his family's hit show, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, was just pure, all-American wholesomeness. He was the boy next door who happened to have a guitar and a hit record. He was safe. He was polished, and he seemed perfect, but a perfect public image can feel like a cage, no matter how shiny it looks. In 1958, this pop icon stepped away from the microphone and into the dusty heat of the Arizona desert. He was cast in a movie that would become a classic, a film directed by a giant of cinema and starring one of the biggest icons Hollywood has ever known. The film was Rio Bravo, and it put Ricky Nelson right alongside John Wayne, Dean Martin, and a fiery, brilliant actress who was about to become a major star herself, Angie Dickson. And on that set, surrounded by larger-than-life legends and the pressure of everyone's expectations, the teen idol mask started to slip. But what was underneath wasn't a scandal or a diva waiting to be exposed. It was something way more surprising, and a lot more human. Angie Dickson, the actress who played the unforgettable Feathers and stood her ground with John Wayne, saw a side of Ricky Nelson that his screaming fans and the TV cameras never did. It was a side that never made it onto magazine covers, a story that wasn't sold to the papers. For decades, what she saw was just a quiet memory, a personal thought overshadowed by the massive myth of Ricky Nelson. But she recently opened up about what it was really like to work with the young superstar. And her story paints a picture not of a teen idol, but of a quiet, watchful, and serious young man. A true professional who, standing in the shadow of giants, showed a surprising amount of depth and humility. This is the story of the Ricky Nelson the world never got to know, told through the eyes of the woman who saw it all. To really get what the vibe was like on the set of Rio Bravo, you have to understand the world it was made in. The year was 1958, and America was right on the edge of a huge cultural shift. The quiet, buttoned-up feeling of the post-war decade was starting to unravel. The beat poets were writing in smoky coffee shops, the civil rights movement was building steam, and you could feel the first rumbles of the chaotic 60s just under the surface. Hollywood was feeling it too. The old studio system, that massive dream factory that had controlled everything for decades, was starting to fall apart. TV wasn't a novelty anymore. It was in every living room, stealing movie audiences and forcing Hollywood to either change or go broke. So, Hollywood went big. Widescreen epics, bright Technicolor, and huge stories that you just couldn't get on a little TV screen. And the go-to genre for this was the Western. The Western was America's mythology, a canvas for stories about heroes, individuals, and taming the frontier. And in 1958, the Western was at its peak. But even in this popular genre, a battle of ideas was going on. Some movies, like 1952's High Noon, told the story of a lone marshal who was abandoned by the very town he was trying to protect. People saw it as a knock on social cowardice. Others thought it was about the McCarthy-era blacklisting that had torn Hollywood apart. One person who absolutely hated High Noon was the legendary director Howard Hawks. Hawks was a master of his craft, the guy who made Scarface, Bringing Up Baby, and The Big Sleep. He was a storyteller who valued quiet competence and professionalism above all else. He believed a good sheriff wouldn't run around town begging for help. He'd hire a few pros and get the job done. So, Hawks and his biggest star, John Wayne, decided to make their own movie as a direct answer to High Noon. It would be a story about a man who stands his ground, not by himself, but with a small, unlikely team of flawed but capable people who choose to help him. That film was Rio Bravo. It was more than just another Western, it was a statement, and it brought together one of the most interesting and iconic casts ever. Into this mix of cinematic titans and big ideas walked Eric Hilliard Nelson, who the world knew simply as Ricky. By 1958, Ricky Nelson wasn't just a star, he was a full-blown phenomenon. His fame was a direct product of the television age. For years, America had literally watched him grow up on the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, a sitcom starring his real family. He was Little Ricky, the sweet younger son in a perfect American home. In the public's mind, the line between the TV character and the real person had completely blurred. Then, in 1957, everything changed. In an episode called Ricky, the Drummer, he performed a cover of Fats Domino's I'm Walkin', and the world went crazy. The reaction was immediate. All of a sudden, Ricky Nelson wasn't just a TV kid, he was a rock and roll star. His record label rushed the song out as a single, and it flew up the charts to number 4. A whole string of hits followed, A Teenager's Romance, Bebop Baby, Stood Up. He developed his own style, a smooth, gentle way of singing that took the rough edges off of rock and roll. It made the music easy to swallow for a mainstream audience that was a little scared of the raw energy of singers like Elvis Presley or Jerry Lee Lewis. Ricky was the handsome, safe alternative. He was the kind of rebel you could actually bring home to meet your parents. His image was carefully managed. Being on TV every week constantly reinforced his persona. His dad, Ozzie Nelson, was a smart showbiz veteran who ran the show and knew how to use this new medium. He made sure Ricky's musical performances were a regular part of the show, creating a perfect feedback loop between his TV fame and his music career. Every Sunday night, millions of families would watch the Nelsons and get a mini concert from America's new heartthrob. It was a brilliant marketing move, but all that fame came with a price. Ricky Nelson was living in a gilded cage. His whole career was managed by his family and a team of handlers. His public appearances were controlled, his interviews were scripted, and his image was protected like a fortress. He was a teenager, but he was also a multi-million-dollar industry. The pressure to keep up that perfect, clean-cut image must have been insane. He was a brand, and the brand was America's teen idol. This was the person who was cast in Rio Bravo. A pop star with almost no serious acting experience, who was now supposed to share the screen with the biggest movie star in the world. You can just imagine the whispers in Hollywood. Was this just a cheap trick to sell tickets to teenagers? Could this polished pop singer possibly have what it takes to survive in a Howard Hawks film? Nobody knew what to expect. If Ricky Nelson was the picture of teen pop stardom, Angie Dickson was pure Hollywood glamour on the rise. She wasn't new to the business. By 1958, she'd already spent years working her way up, appearing in TV shows and B-movies. She'd played everything from a gangster's girlfriend to a tough frontier woman and had built a reputation as a reliable, and incredibly beautiful, actress. But she was still looking for that one role that would make her a leading lady. That role was Feathers, the sharp, witty, poker-playing woman with a secret past in Rio Bravo. Her public image was one of cool, smart sensuality. She was often called a bombshell with a brain, a woman who could be both glamorous and tough. At a time when female roles were often just damsels in distress, the characters Dickson played had an edge to them, a self-reliance that made them stand out. The part of Feathers was perfect for her. She was a woman who was John Wayne's equal, a character who could trade insults with him, challenge him, and win him over not by being helpless, but with her strength and wit. As she later said, she was never the ingenue. She had a maturity about her, which was pretty essential for a 27-year-old actress trying to create believable romantic chemistry with a 51-year-old John Wayne. Getting the part was, as she would later say, the happiest moment of her career. It was a huge opportunity and a sign that all her hard work had paid off. But it was also terrifying. She was walking onto a set run by men who weren't just actors, they were institutions. You had John Wayne, the living symbol of American manhood, Dean Martin, the impossibly cool crooner from the Rat Pack, and Howard Hawks, the famously demanding director. And then there was the teen idol, Ricky Nelson. On paper, it was a strange mix of people. The seasoned bombshell and the boy-next-door rock star. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, but in a way, they were both outsiders on that set, two rising stars in a sky full of legends. At the center of it all was Howard Hawks. Hawks wasn't a director who yelled or threw fits. His authority was quiet but absolute. He was a deliberate filmmaker, known for his minimalist style and his focus on character. He could famously just stand there for 10 minutes without saying a word, waiting for an actor to figure out a scene on their own. He hated over-the-top drama and valued actors who could show deep emotion with just a look. Getting a part in a Howard Hawks film was a huge deal, but it meant you had to meet his incredibly high standards. He was especially doubtful about casting Ricky Nelson, a decision the studio had pushed on him. He thought Nelson was too young and skinny to play a gunslinger named Colorado Ryan, so he purposely gave him very few lines in the script. This wasn't just a challenge, it was a test. Nelson was going to have to make his presence felt with almost nothing but his attitude. Then you had John Wayne. By 1958, the Duke wasn't just a movie star, he was an American monument. He was the biggest box office draw in the country, a symbol of rugged individualism. His on-screen persona had completely merged with his public one. When he walked on a set, he brought that whole legacy with him. Being his co-star meant you were standing next to a living legend. But for all his larger-than-life presence, Wayne was known for being generous and patient with his fellow actors, especially ones he respected. Angie Dickson would later call him adorable in the film, saying he showed a warmth and gentleness with the cast that you didn't always see in his other roles. He seemed to take it upon himself to make his younger co-stars feel comfortable, a quiet act of leadership that really set the tone for the whole shoot, and rounding out the trio of legends was Dean Martin. If Wayne was the tough oak tree of American masculinity, Dean Martin was the cool, swaying palm. As part of the Rat Pack, his whole image was effortless charm, casual drinking, and a voice as smooth as silk. He was the king of cool, a guy who never looked like he was trying too hard. But his role in Rio Bravo as the town drunk dude was one of the toughest of his career. He had to strip away all that glamour and show a raw vulnerability that really surprised people. On set, he and Wayne became close, often playing cards or chess between scenes. They were the established pros, the old guard who created a kind of clubby, fraternal vibe. This was the world that Angie Dickson and Ricky Nelson stepped into. A world ruled by titans who had defined Hollywood. The potential for egos to clash was huge. The pressure to live up to these men's reputations was off the charts. It was a sink-or-swim situation, and for the two youngest cast members, it would be the ultimate test of their character. The production set up shop in the dry, sun-baked landscape of Tucson, Arizona. The heat was brutal, the dust was everywhere, and being so far from everything created a world of its own. Away from the gossip of Hollywood, the cast and crew became their own little society. The film itself wasn't some sprawling epic. The story was simple: a sheriff, his alcoholic deputy, an old man, and a young gunslinger hole up in a jail to fight off a powerful rancher. But the genius of the script was that it focused on the small moments, the conversations, the friendships, the unspoken bonds that form between people. It was what Quentin Tarantino would later call a hangout movie. You're just invited to spend time with these characters, to watch them talk, joke, and show you who they are. This character-driven style meant that the dynamic on set was more important than ever. The friendship we see on screen had to be built on real respect off-screen. And this is where the questions started. How would it all actually play out? Would the legends, Wayne and Martin, accept the newcomers? Would Angie Dickson, the only major female presence, be able to hold her own in such a male-dominated world? And the biggest question of all, what about the teen idol? Would Ricky Nelson, a kid used to screaming fans and the controlled set of his family's TV show, just be a distraction? Would he be a diva? Would he be completely out of his league? People were curious and a little skeptical. The public image of Ricky Nelson, the pop star, the heartthrob, seemed completely wrong for the gritty, professional world of a Howard Hawks Western. He was a wild card in a very high-stakes game. The stage was set for some classic Hollywood drama. But what actually happened in the Arizona desert was something nobody saw coming. It wasn't a story of conflict, but of a quiet connection that would forever change how Angie Dickson remembered the young man the world thought it knew. For Angie Dickson, the first surprise wasn't some big dramatic moment, but something she quietly noticed. When she first met Ricky Nelson on set, he wasn't the swaggering rock star she might have been expecting. The public Ricky Nelson was all smiles and easy confidence. The private Ricky Nelson, she quickly realized, was completely different. As she put it, he was reserved and almost shy. This wasn't some act to make him seem cool, it was just how a very young man behaved when he was thrown into a strange and intimidating new world. Just picture it, the set of Rio Bravo is buzzing with activity. Crew members are hauling equipment. Wranglers are handling horses. And in the middle of it all are the towering figures of John Wayne, holding court, and Dean Martin, being effortlessly cool. They're the centers of gravity on set. And somewhere off to the side, sitting quietly, is Ricky Nelson. He's not trying to be the center of attention. He's not telling stories or soaking up his own fame. He's just watching. He was, as Dickson noticed, incredibly observant. He was studying Howard Hawks, listening to how he talked to the other actors. He was watching John Wayne, taking in his every move and the quiet authority he had. He was absorbing everything, like a student in a masterclass of old-school filmmaking. That quietness could have easily been mistaken for arrogance or boredom. But Angie Dickson saw it for what it was, a sign of respect and maybe a little bit of youthful insecurity. After all, he was only 17 when filming started, turning 18 during the shoot. He was new to a massive film set like this and was very aware of how little experience he had. He understood where he fit in. He wasn't there to challenge John Wayne or Dean Martin, he was there to learn from them. That humility was the first crack in the teen idol facade. The world saw a pop sensation who had conquered the music charts, but Angie Dickson saw a young, thoughtful artist who was humble enough to know what he didn't know. He was a polite and pleasant young man who mostly kept to himself, a huge contrast to the loud, larger-than-life personalities of his co-stars. It was a revelation that completely changed her idea of who he was. That quiet humility came with an intense, unwavering professionalism. On a Howard Hawks set, you earned your reputation through your work ethic, and Ricky Nelson quickly earned the respect of everyone there. Despite his age and his superstar status, he had a level of discipline that impressed them all, including Angie Dickson. She noted that he was always on time, always respectful, and always ready to learn. There were no rock star tantrums, no special requests, no entourage creating a wall between him and everyone else. He was just an actor, there to do his job. He paid close attention to every instruction Howard Hawks gave him. This was really important because Hawks had purposely written his part with very little dialogue. Nelson had to communicate the character of Colorado Ryan, a young, confident gunfighter, almost entirely through his presence and his reactions. He had to hold his own on screen with John Wayne and Dean Martin without the help of clever lines or big speeches. It was a huge acting challenge that required incredible focus, and Nelson rose to the occasion, working hard to meet the high standards that Hawks, and the script, demanded. Just think about the pressure he must have been under. He was stepping into a genre that John Wayne basically owned. He was acting alongside Dean Martin, one of the most beloved entertainers in the world. And he was being directed by a legend who wasn't even sure he was right for the part. A lot of people might have crumbled under that pressure, or maybe overcompensated by acting tough. Nelson did none of that. He channeled all that pressure into a quiet, focused determination. He showed up on time, knew his lines, hit his marks, and listened to his director. Angie Dickson would later call him a consummate professional, which is high praise from an actress who worked with just about everyone in the business. He wasn't playing the part of a movie star, he was doing the hard work of an actor. And with that dedication, he earned the one thing that mattered most on that set, the respect of his peers. Maybe nothing shows the real atmosphere on the Rio Bravo set better than the legendary prank they played on Ricky Nelson for his 18th birthday. About a week into the shoot, on May 8, 1958, Nelson officially became an adult. His older, more experienced co-stars, John Wayne and Dean Martin, decided that an occasion like that needed a proper celebration. They had sort of become like big brothers to the young star, and they felt it was their duty to welcome him to manhood in a way he'd never forget. Their gift wasn't a nice watch or a new guitar. Instead, Wayne and Martin gave Ricky Nelson a 300-pound sack of steer manure. And then, they picked him up and threw him into it. It was an outrageous, messy, and completely unforgettable moment. Now, on the surface, that might sound like a mean prank, a way for the old guard to put the new kid in his place. But in the unique, testosterone-fueled world of a John Wayne movie set, it was actually the highest form of a compliment. It wasn't mean, it was about inclusion. That prank was a signal. It was Wayne and Martin's way of saying, "You're one of us now, kid." It broke down the walls of fame and status. In that moment, he wasn't Ricky Nelson, the teen idol with a million fans. He was just a young actor, covered in manure, being initiated into the club by two of the biggest stars in the world. Reports say Nelson was surprised but took it all in good fun, understanding the rough-and-tumble friendship it came from. This story perfectly backs up Angie Dickson's memories of a friendly and supportive set. The friendship was real. It was a place where legends could play a childish prank on a teen idol, and everyone could have a good laugh about it. It showed that even though he was quiet, Nelson wasn't an outsider. He was accepted, he was liked, and he was part of the family Howard Hawks had built in the Arizona desert. This kind of real, behind-the-scenes story is what makes classic Hollywood so fascinating. We've talked about the public image and the private reality, but the story of Ricky Nelson's true character doesn't stop here. If you're enjoying this look into the making of Rio Bravo and want more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age, take a second to subscribe to our channel. We're all about uncovering the truth behind the legends, and if you subscribe, you won't miss a thing. Now, let's get back to what Angie Dickson saw in those quiet moments between takes, when the